Hi, this is Shauna from the Foil Fox, and I'm here on the Papertrey Ink and Ink to Paper Collection YouTube channel. And I'm sharing the wonderful Ravishing Ranunculus. These are these beautiful flowers. Here is the stamp set. There is 2 panels to it. It has 3 sizes of flowers, the base, and then some layering stamps, as well as some leaves and some stems. And then, of course, it has the matching die set. And then there's going to be kind of a surprise. I'm using hay bales. You'll see how I'm going to be using that. I'm going to be using the large hay bale there. And then this is a brand new frame. I just love this frame. It is the Border Bling leaves, and it cuts out some really wonderful pattern of leaves. And then I'm using an oldie but goodie. This is the beautiful bouquet, and I'm using the berries in this. And then I'm also going to be using Floral Delicacies die, because it has this spray of leaves that I want to use for a backdrop. So to make all this happen, I've got some Weathervane, some black cardstock, some watercolor paper, and Bristol paper. So I'm going to start out with first the Bristol paper, and I'm going to use the large flower, but I am not going to use the base for this. The reason why I'm using Bristol paper is because I wanted a white background, and I'm just stamping it with the Autumn Rose and Scarlet Jewel. And then I am going to spritz it with water just a little bit, just to get it to the ink to move a little bit. And I'll add just a dash of Bright Buttercup. There, I spritz it, and then I'm going to stamp it onto Bristol paper. Bristol paper is great for this because it does tolerate a little bit of water. And then with some dark brown, I'm going to stamp that cute little stamp for the center. With that done on the Bristol paper, I'm going to move to the watercolor paper, and I'm going to stamp the bases of these. These I'm using Berry Sorbet and Autumn Rose, and then I'm going to use a touch of the Buttercup. I spritz it after I've blended it a little bit with my finger. And see how those colors really mingle? That's what watercolor paper is going to do for you, or Bristol paper, but particularly watercolor paper. And then I'm stamping it, the detail, the top layer, with Scarlet Jewel. And then I'm going to stamp the center with chocolate brown, dark chocolate brown. So you can see that gives a really bright, I really love the colors of that. Now I'm going to do one more. It's going to be a little bit lighter. I'm going to use more of the yellow, a little more of the Berry Sorbet. And I'm going to use also Raspberry Fizz on this one. And I use it on the edges and a little bit in the center. And again, blended it with my finger and then spritzed it. And then stamped it, allowing those inks to kind of blend together so you don't have any harsh edges. And now I'm going to do the detail stamp of this, which is Scarlet Jewel and Autumn Rose and Raspberry Fizz. I really kind of wanted that bright color. I wasn't sure how I felt about these colors. I'm going to do one more that's just a little bit lighter. But before I do, you can see I wasn't leaning over far enough to catch it, to make sure it was the top stamp was stamped correctly. So I just filled it in with a little bit of ink that I had put on my mat, and then spritzed it, and then used a brush and colored it in a little. But this one, then I stamped another flower a little bit lighter using the same colors. But moving on to the leaves, I'm using Spring Moss and New Leaf, Ripe Avocado, and Pine Feather. I like to use different colors for my inking because I think it looks a little bit more lifelike. Now, and I also am able to vary it a little bit so I don't get the same leaf every time. I'm going to make this one just a little bit lighter using more of the Spring Moss. And then I'm going to use the Ripe Avocado and the Pine Feather for the top stamp of the veining, just to give it a little bit more detail. And I really like how that turns out because it really defines that leaf. I'm going to stamp the rest of them the same way. and I'm sure you've seen other videos of mine where I do blend my colors. I really don't want to use just one color. I like having a little bit of variation. And now that those are done, I'm going to use this die to cut out all these leaves. But first I'm going to take this watercolor panel and I'm inking up my glass mat, spritzing it with water, and then kind of blending it around. And I'm using those four colors, the spring moss, green new leaf, and ripe avocado, and pine feather. And I'm just adding in different colors. I'm using lots of water here, so I'm going wet on wet, and I'm just going to try to add in some interest here. I want to have it look a little bit blotchy because it won't look that blotchy once it dries. It's going to dry back lighter. And I'm going to set that aside, by the way, and let that dry and see how that turns out. In the meantime, I'm going to take those berries from the beautiful bouquet. Just love these berries. They really add so much to a project. And there's a few stamps of these, and I'm stamping the stems with chocolate brown and then using Scarlet Jewel and Pure Poppy for the berries. And I'm just going to stamp this one, and then ink up those little berries using the same thing, which is the Scarlet Jewel and the Pure Poppy. Now I'm going to take the largest hay bale, and I'm going to cut out the outline with Weathervane cardstock, and then the detail one that has all of the nooks and crannies to it is going to be cut out of watercolor paper. And then I'll cut out all the flowers and the leaves using the matching die set. I'm also going to cut, while I'm in the cutting mood, I'm going to cut a black frame of those leaves, and I'm going to cut that spray of leaves. That's what I wanted out of the floral delicacy. But once I cut them, I realized there wasn't much contrast, so I'm going to add in a little bit more contrast by using pine feather and ripe avocado. And it does look really blotchy the way it does now, but when it dries back, you're going to find that it doesn't look so crazy, and plus when I take away the negative space. But while that's drying, I'm going to be coloring this top of the hay bale. I've pushed out all of the little pieces that were cut, and so that I'm just kind of have this really random kind of holy looking top to the hay bale. I'm going to let that dry, and I've cut out the black border. You can see it there. It's hard to see it black on black, but it is a wonderful border. It's wonderful in so many different ways. I think next I'm going to use fall colors, but for now I'm going black on black. So a black panel with this black frame right on top, using some liquid glue to adhere that. And then now now that this is dry, I'm going to add some liquid glue to the top of this hay bale, and I'm going to add this to right on top of the Weathervane solid part of the hay bale. And then, because this is going to be not a hay bale but a vase, I want to trim those edges. I'm not going to trim them completely smooth, but I do want them to be smoother. I do like kind of the little bit of irregularity to the edges. I think it adds a little bit more natural look to it and a little more modern look to it. Kind of a stone pottery. I'm not quite sure what kind of look it gives. But now I'm arranging and deciding what flowers. I do really try to stay with a odd number of flowers, so I'll stick to just 3. And then now with this, you see this leaf spray. You can see why I wanted it. It has this wonderful backdrop of leaves to use, and this spray provides me with lots of different leaves that I can cut up into different sections and then just use them for whatever looks or works best. And I'm just kind of tucking those in just to get an idea how that look, and adding in the leaves from the ranunculus set, and tucking those here and there. I'm not going to stick them down yet. I'm just getting an idea. And see how those just really add. And now that I know that's pretty much how I want to have it, I'm going to take this whole top and I'm going to put some double stick tape, and then I'm going to add it to a black card base. So this really is tone on tone. Hard to see, I think, here, but in real life, it's really that those leaves really show up. And now with this vase, I'm going to use some liquid glue and stick it down. I don't care that it's too tall because the flowers are going to cover it up, and it's going to give me a base to put these leaves on, and the flowers. So I'm just going to kind of pull apart whatever parts of the leaves I want to use. And then I have some foam tape on the back of each of these flowers. And since I had arranged it before, I know pretty much where I want it to go. You know, I always do have to fiddle a little bit, but it does give me an idea. I did have an idea where it should go. I never push down really hard in the beginning because I do end up moving them around. And I do kind of bend that flower so that it's kind of domey. It seems to look a little bit better. And then now I'm going to tuck in these leaves, glue those down. And then I'm going to take the other leaves and we're going to just stick those in place. You can see them. This card is really coming together really fast, but gives you a real dramatic look with the black background and these really kind of bright, vibrant flowers. And then we'll tuck those berries just where we think they should go. And once they're all in place, then I'm going to do the sentiment. And now I'm using Tagged, which is one of my favorite mini sentiment packs. And I'm just using Many Thanks. I like to use a more generic sentiments because I find them to be more useful that way. So I stamped it in true black on white cardstock. I'm just trimming the edges into kind of making a little flag there, ends on each end. And then once that is done, I'm going to have a little bit of foam tape and then just stick it there kind of in position, kind of deciding where it should go. I finally decided it should go on the left side. And then for my final step, I'm taking some Simply White Nouveau crystal drops, and I'm just adding a few little white dots there. I could have used my wonderful Dr. P.H. Martin white, but I chose these dots instead. So here you see a close-up of it, and for me, I love contrast, and so these really vibrant flowers and the black background and those leaves, it just really makes a statement, and I love the vase. And I hope you did too. And if you did, please give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. And be sure to pop over to blog.inktopaper.com. There'll be a supply list there. There's oodles more inspiration for you. And here is a short list of some of the things that I used that you can take a look at. But be sure to go over to the blog. There's lots more. And you can always go over to foilfox.com. There's tons more there too. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.